Anthony Mackie, who stars in Falcon and Winter Soldier, is denying some fans who really want to see a queer relationship between his character and Buffy. And we're really responding more to the controversy itself and some commentators. I am not a big fan of the Hell Baby and his work. I think he's mostly overall disgusting, uninformed, and pretty stupid. But occasionally I think he's on the right track. And I actually agree with him on this one, which is that this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Anthony Mackie's perfectly fine to reject the so-called queer label legitimately. But still, I think from a larger angle, he gets a lot of things wrong. And we're going to reference Buffy, which I think is very relevant. And he actually makes a kind of critical mistake there towards the end of his video, which we'll comment on.
Problem. And here it's the same. It's essentially saying you put two guys on the screen together now and people are just going to go, oh, I need to see my homosexuality in those two characters. It's not the case, particularly when they are both straight. And again, there is a caveat which I'm going to get to later on. So something that's always been very important to me is showing a sensitive, masculine figure. There's nothing more masculine than being a superhero and flying around and letting women beat up your women for you. Sorry, beating people up. But there's nothing more sensitive than having emotional conversations and a kindred spirit friendship with someone that you care about and love. A platonic love that he's referring to. Yeah, he's kind of saying that, you know, the platonic buddy relationships that we used to see on screen are dying out because of the way that everyone wants to now ship it, exploit it, and turn it into something that doesn't exist. However, let me get to the caveat. However, it's not all the alphabet community's fault by any stretch of the imagination, because companies that put these shows out, they like to queerbait. They do like to queerbait. And
his basic spiel is, of course, let's not blame the actors, let's blame the studio. I'm quite unsure what he means. Does he mean the Disney Corporation? Does he mean Marvel? The MCU, Kevin Feige? I myself, again, and I'm trying to become a screenwriter, so it's not in my financial interest, but I think, yeah, if we have to place responsibility, this is Kevin Feige. I don't believe this whole mythology of the phases or the foozes or the whatever, or they had a magical plan. I just don't believe that stuff. But nevertheless, I do think they made key decisions, and it was pretty clear, at least for the first whatever wave of movies and shows, they just made a concerted effort not to have queer characters. You can't find a single homosexual character among the major main casts, or either protagonists or antagonists, and that was clearly a deliberate decision. But now they're doing catch up, and they want to change things, and they do want to appeal to all these audiences. So maybe they're trying to appeal to a quote queer audience, but not do so very explicitly. But again, we don't really have any evidence. So as much as I think Mackie is correct, and even not all of it, but his Hell Baby's basic reaction to it, that this is just silly, I don't think the reasoning holds up that, well, we need to blame the studio, they're the problem. We just don't have enough evidence. And people I know from the other side, and I've looked at some of their videos, try to keep pointing out these visual images that imply something, but I'm still not seeing what the case is. It seems basically an interpretation by some fans, and they want others to endorse it, but I just don't see enough evidence there to endorse the interpretation. But now we're going to get to the other level of it, which is the kind of media reaction. And I think, and here I'm going to be in more agreement that there is something suspicious happening. But again, he gets a few things factually wrong.
Bucky's perspective, the character's straight. So this is bait. You know? Oh, you know, kind of rubbing around on each other there. And this this was just fucking freaking dumb. This scene here, where they just the woman wanted them to lock, you know, knees into testicles and stuff. That was just ridiculous. But that's not his fault. He's got an established character with established perimeters. Oh, okay, I'll just stick to watching the superhero TV shows and movies where there are gays in healthy and emotional relationships. Oh, wait, that's right, there aren't any. If I want to imagine these fictional characters are gay, I will do so. Well, you are well within your rights to imagine it, but it's headcanon. It's headcanon, it's not actual canon. So you want to get frustrated that the characters are straight, that's your fault, that's your problem. You can imagine up here all day long, mate. That's your prerogative to do. But again, it's not Anthony Mackie's fault. If you want to call if there is a villain in this piece, if you want to call something out, call the studio out. Call Marvel out for queer baiting.
All right, well, I want to focus on that particular tweet that, oh, I need to wait for a superhero show that shows me a healthy queer relationship. And the answer is, well, we already have one. It's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think you can definitely say that Willow qualifies as a superpowered heroine. Buffy qualifies as a superhero. So we have had a superhero show with a queer relationship. But now that we've highlighted Buffy, we're going to see the problems and limits. Because it is true that they did show a queer relationship. And they were a little careful about it, so if you weren't paying attention to the show, you probably didn't even notice it. But if you are a longtime fan, you're well aware that Tara is a queer character, although she was eventually killed off. But I won't say where, I don't want to be a spoiler. But now we get on to the next issue, which I think is vital, because what HeelvsBaby's saying is basically like, listen, the character was already set up a certain way. To change him now would be to upset the rules, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I agree with the other tweet that there are no real rules in fiction, at least not like physics. It's not gravity, right? It's not Newtonian physics. It's not like literal strong rules you can depend on or say, well, we can't do it because of this rule. That's not true. They can do whatever they please. But now if we turn to Buffy, it shows kind of the problems here, because I thought about this for a while, and I'm working a video on this, that, well, I really didn't have much problems with Tara and Willow, although a lot of people complain about Amber Benson's acting and stuff like that, etc., etc. And putting aside the quality of the performance, I thought it was fine, but the reason they did it that way, that they had a minor character have a queer relationship with a major character, was studio pressure. And Joss Whedon has been explicit on this, that he has admitted that, yeah, we wanted to do something else, we wanted to do more, but constantly the network was censoring them, so this was a compromise. It's like, okay, fine, you can have this relationship, but you got to constrain it, because they were really afraid of protests or losing the heterosexual audience. But it's been in my thought for a while, well, if you are going to do this, in terms of the story, honestly, it would have made a lot more sense for Willow and Buffy to pursue this relationship. Now, I'm not saying they had to be a queer couple at all, but I'm saying it's just strange they never even considered this a possibility. Like, Willow just doesn't bring it up. And given that they're long-term friends, that's really bizarre, because they did touch upon possible romance between her and Xander. So it can't be, well, they're just close friends, there's nothing there. No, they've had situations where close friends of Buffy do become romantically involved with her. I mean, look at Spike. He started off as an enemy. So it doesn't seem to me to come together that Tara and Willow make sense, but Buffy and Willow don't make sense. It's also been well established that Willow and Buffy are really close friends. They share a lot of love for one another, but it never became queer. But why in that case? We don't know. I mean, in the fiction, we don't get an explanation. But if we turn to the politics of it, we probably know the answer. It's that they just didn't want that. They censored that decision. So I am with the HeelvsBaby here. It would not make sense with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I think we should be cognizant. There probably is kind of a commercial pressure to shape the characters a certain way in the first place. And I think he's not being totally honest there. So it's true, there's no rules in fiction, but I do think once you set a character a certain way, you are kind of stuck. And you want to be careful not to change the character too radically. But there's also a case, and I think this is true on the part of queer activists, that the MCU just does not have a whole lot of homosexual characters. And that is something that should be addressed, but it should probably be a Kevin Feige issue. Saying it's a studio issue, I think, is in a lot of ways not correct. He's the one who constructed this universe. He's the architect. And he made a decision, yeah, we're not going to really have too many gay characters. That's okay, that's fine. But now he should answer the question, well, why not? Because that's the consequence of this. If there were gay characters at the beginning, it would make sense that possibly Falcon or Winter Soldier are gay, but since there weren't any, it would be a dramatic shift. So we're kind of stuck. So I can understand the queer activist point of view, but I think in terms of interpretations, it does not work, at least in this case. But would it work in other cases? Yes, I think like the Willow Buffy case, it definitely would work. And that not being pursued is a bit of a contradiction because it does seem reasonable that that queer relationship would occur naturally within that story. And why it doesn't happen is problematic. So if you're going to be consistent and say, let's just go with the canon, let's go with character consistency, Falcon and Winter Soldier don't have a problem, but Buffy has a problem. And that provides, I think, a lot of sober thinking about what people want in terms of representation and dealing with the consequences of that. It's not as simple as people think that having representation is a good thing or is going to lead to XYZ. It's a very complicated political process. Let's not turn the character gay, but we should also be realistic that this is probably a commercial decision. It's not really an artistic one. At least that's my opinion. All right, thanks for listening.